Every individual is born with something extraordinary, something that cannot be replicated, replaced, or stolen. Yet, for most of life, people are conditioned to compare themselves with others, to measure their worth by someone else's achievements, and to shrink their individuality to fit into a mold created by society. This constant cycle of comparison robs people of their true power. The best version of yourself will never come from being a second-rate copy of someone else. It will only emerge when you fully embrace your uniqueness and allow your authentic self to shine without apology. Think about this. In a world of billions, no two fingerprints are the same, no two minds think in exactly the same way, and no two hearts beat with the same rhythm of passion and dreams. That in itself proves that existence has a purpose for your individuality. The greatest tragedy, however, is when a person dies having never lived as themselves. When they hide behind masks of perfection, behind the expectations of family, behind the fear of society's judgment, and behind the temptation to conform to whatever looks safe. Playing safe may get you temporary acceptance, but it will never give you fulfillment. True fulfillment comes from unapologetically being who you are. Most people are too afraid to step into their authenticity. They want to be loved, liked, and validated by others, so they begin to shape themselves into what they think others will approve of. They dress in ways that fit the crowd. They choose careers that earn applause instead of joy. They silence their voices to avoid conflict, and they pretend to be less intelligent, less ambitious, or less talented than they really are so that they don't threaten anyone. But every time you dim your light, you betray the gift you were born to bring into this world. You weren't designed to fit in. You were designed to stand out. The path to becoming the best version of yourself begins the moment you stop asking, "What will they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of myself?" Because when the day ends, the voices of others fade away, but the voice inside your head stays with you forever. If that inner voice is disappointed, ashamed, or unfulfilled because you lived your life for someone else's approval, then no amount of external applause will ever compensate for the emptiness you feel within. On the other hand, when you live authentically, when you dare to pursue the life that feels true to your soul, even if no one else understands it, you carry an unshakable peace. That peace is the foundation of power. Uniqueness is not just about personality, it's about perspective. You may have the same job title as millions of others, but the way you approach that role, the creativity you bring, the empathy you offer, and the way you solve problems will always be different. That difference is your competitive edge. In every field, it is originality that transforms mediocrity into greatness. Imagine if the greatest inventors, artists, or leaders had simply copied what others were doing. There would be no innovation, no breakthroughs, no progress. The world only moves forward when someone dares to be different. Your life is no exception. The truth is, it's uncomfortable to embrace uniqueness. Standing out means you will be judged, misunderstood, and criticized. People are often intimidated by what they don't understand, and your authenticity may make them uncomfortable because it reminds them of the parts of themselves they are too afraid to express. That discomfort from others often turns into criticism, and if you are not strong enough, you may mistake their criticism as a sign that you are wrong. But criticism is not always a reflection of your flaw. Many times, it is proof that you are on the right path, a path that others are too afraid to walk themselves. The ones who succeed at the highest levels of life are not those who avoid criticism, but those who learn to thrive in spite of it. They recognize that their uniqueness is their brand, their power, and their ticket to living a life that leaves a mark. You cannot inspire the world by being ordinary. You inspire the world by being brave enough to reveal your truth, even when it feels risky. But embracing uniqueness also requires responsibility. It is not about being different just for the sake of being different, nor is it about arrogance or rebellion without purpose. It is about aligning with your truest self, your passions, your values, your vision, and bringing that into everything you do. Authenticity without responsibility is chaos, but authenticity with responsibility becomes influence. When you live authentically and responsibly, you become an example to others. You give them silent permission to also step out of their fear and into their own power. Think about the countless lives that are waiting to be touched by your authenticity. There are people who will only heal, grow, or find courage when they see you standing in your truth. If you hide who you are, you deprive them of that inspiration. Sometimes, your uniqueness is not just for you, it is for the world. Every talent, every passion, every story you carry is not random. It is designed to be shared in a way that lifts others up. By embracing your uniqueness, you fulfill not only your own destiny, but also your responsibility to contribute to the world. But how do you begin to live authentically in a world that constantly pressures you to conform? It begins with self-awareness. You have to ask yourself difficult questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What brings me joy? What values do I refuse to compromise on? What kind of impact do I want to leave behind? Once you begin to answer these questions honestly, you will start to peel away the layers of conditioning that society has placed on you. You will discover the self beneath the masks, the one that is raw, unfiltered, and real. That self is where your true power lies. Next, it requires courage. Courage to walk away from paths that don't align with you. Courage to say no when others expect you to say yes. Courage to pursue dreams that seem impossible. Courage to walk alone when the crowd does not understand your vision. This courage doesn't mean you will never feel fear. Fear will always be present, but courage means you act in spite of it. Courage means you refuse to let fear control the choices that shape your destiny, and then comes consistency. It is not enough to embrace your uniqueness once in a while. To become the best version of yourself, you must live in alignment with your true self every day. That means in the smallest of choices, what you say, how you act, how you spend your time, who you surround yourself with. You constantly choose authenticity over conformity. Over time, those consistent choices compound and transform your entire life. The reward of this journey is freedom. Freedom from the chains of comparison. Freedom from the exhausting need for approval. Freedom from the fear of judgment. And most importantly, freedom to live fully, unapologetically, and powerfully as yourself. That freedom creates confidence, and confidence attracts opportunities. When you stand firmly in your uniqueness, people will respect you even if they don't always agree with you. Opportunities will find you because authenticity is magnetic. It draws the right people, the right circumstances, and the right destiny to you. So remember this, your uniqueness is not a weakness to be hidden, it is your strength to be celebrated. The best version of yourself is not found in becoming like someone else, but in becoming more of who you already are. Your life is not meant to be a photocopy of anyone else's. It is meant to be a masterpiece only you can create. Every time you choose authenticity, you step closer to that masterpiece. And when that masterpiece is finally revealed, it will not only set you free but inspire countless others to do the same. Growth is not free. It is not something that simply happens because you wish for it or because you dream about it. Growth demands a price, and the price is sacrifice. Every person who has ever achieved greatness, who has transformed their life, who has reached a place of strength and influence, has had to give up something to get there. The question is not whether you want to grow. The real question is whether you are willing to let go of what is comfortable, easy, and familiar in order to step into the unknown, into the discomfort that leads to your transformation. Most people dream of success, yet very few are willing to pay the price it requires. They want the rewards without the discipline, the strength without the struggle, and the transformation without the sacrifice. But the truth of life is that there is always a trade-off. Every time you say yes to growth, you are saying no to something else. You are saying no to wasted time, no to unhealthy habits, no to toxic relationships, no to the excuses that keep you small. Sacrifice is not punishment. It is the path to liberation. It often begins with comfort. Comfort feels safe, but it is also the greatest enemy of growth. When you are comfortable, you have no reason to stretch, no reason to push harder, no reason to demand more of yourself. You settle for average because average feels good enough, but comfort zones are not where dreams are achieved. Comfort zones are where dreams quietly die. Every time you choose comfort over sacrifice, you choose stagnation over progress. You cannot step into a new life while clinging to the habits of your old one. Growth demands that you let go. Consider the sacrifices required in time. Time is the most precious resource you have, yet most people waste it on distractions that bring no value. Hours spent scrolling endlessly, gossiping, indulging in entertainment that numbs rather than inspires, or surrounding themselves with people who drain rather than uplift. If you want to grow, you must sacrifice these empty uses of time. That means choosing discipline over distraction, choosing learning over laziness, choosing creation over consumption. Every hour you sacrifice from meaningless activity and invest into your personal growth compounds into a future far greater than you can imagine. Growth also requires sacrificing comfort in your body. If you want strength, health, and energy, you cannot indulge in unhealthy choices day after day. You must be willing to sacrifice the temporary pleasure of junk food, late nights, and inactivity in exchange for the discipline of exercise, nourishment, and rest. Your body is the foundation of your life, and if it is neglected, everything else crumbles. The sacrifice may feel difficult in the moment, but the reward is vitality, clarity, and longevity. Then there are the sacrifices of relationships. Not everyone in your life is meant to continue with you on the journey of growth. Some people are attached to the old version of you, the one who settled, who played small, who stayed in the comfort zone. When you decide to grow, those people may resist, criticize, or even resent you. They may try to pull you back because your growth makes them confront their own lack of progress. To keep growing, you must be willing to sacrifice toxic connections, even when it hurts. You must create boundaries with those who drain your energy and surround yourself with those who challenge you, inspire you, and push you forward. This sacrifice is painful but necessary, because the environment you place yourself in has the power to shape your destiny. Growth requires sacrificing excuses. Excuses feel comfortable because they protect you from accountability. It is easier to say, "I don't have time," than to admit you are wasting time. It is easier to say, "I don't have resources," than to admit you are not resourceful enough. It is easier to say, "It's not the right time," than to admit you are afraid. But excuses are lies that keep you chained to the life you claim you want to escape. To grow, you must be willing to sacrifice the habit of making excuses and replace it with the discipline of taking action, no matter how imperfect that action may be. Growth never happens by accident. It is a deliberate choice made over and over again, and excuses cannot coexist with that choice. There is also the sacrifice of ego. The ego wants to be right, to be praised, to look good in front of others. But growth often requires humility. It requires admitting that you do not know everything, that you have flaws to correct, that you have mistakes to learn from. If your ego is too fragile, you will resist feedback, you will avoid failure, and you will stay stuck. The sacrifice of ego means being willing to look foolish as you learn, being willing to fail publicly, being willing to start over when necessary. Humility is not weakness. It is the soil where growth takes root. Growth also requires financial sacrifice. You cannot expect to grow in knowledge, skills, or opportunities without investing in yourself. That means being willing to spend money on education, on mentors, on experiences that expand your perspective. Too many people waste money on temporary pleasures, but hesitate when it comes to investing in their future. Every great transformation requires financial commitment. Sacrificing momentary luxury for long-term success is not loss, it is strategy. Another sacrifice is certainty. Human beings crave certainty because it makes them feel secure, but growth requires stepping into the unknown. You cannot predict everything. You cannot guarantee every outcome. If you wait until you are completely ready, until the path is clear, until you feel safe, you will never begin. Sacrificing certainty means embracing risk, embracing discomfort, and embracing the possibility of failure. But within that sacrifice lies freedom, because the willingness to step into uncertainty is what separates those who live limited lives from those who live extraordinary ones. It is also important to understand that sacrifice is not a one-time act. It is a lifestyle. Growth is not a destination. It is a continuous journey. At every stage of your life, there will be new sacrifices to make. What you gave up to get here is not what you must give up to get there. The higher you climb, the greater the sacrifices required. But with each sacrifice, you gain something of higher value: discipline, resilience, wisdom, clarity, freedom. The temporary pain of sacrifice always leads to the permanent reward of transformation. Too often, people look at those who are successful and admire the results without recognizing the sacrifices behind them. They see the confidence, but not the countless hours of self-doubt battled in silence. They see the strength, but not the years of discipline. They see the wealth, but not the years of investing and risking. They see the success, but not the sacrifices that built it. If you want the results, you must be willing to pay the price. But here is the beautiful truth: the more you sacrifice for your growth, the less it feels like loss. At first, giving up comfort feels painful. Giving up unhealthy habits feels like punishment. Walking away from toxic people feels lonely. But over time, you begin to realize that what you sacrificed was never truly serving you. You see that comfort was only holding you back, that unhealthy habits were robbing you of energy, that toxic relationships were suffocating your spirit. You realize that what you gave up was never a treasure, it was a weight, and by sacrificing it, you free yourself to rise higher than you ever thought possible. This is why sacrifice is not something to fear, but something to embrace. It is not about deprivation, it is about exchange. You are not simply losing something, you are trading it for something far greater. You give up temporary ease to gain long-term strength. You give up superficial approval to gain deep self-respect. You give up excuses to gain progress. You give up fear to gain freedom. Every sacrifice is a seed, and every seed eventually grows into a harvest that multiplies far beyond what you gave up. The best version of yourself is waiting on the other side of sacrifice. You will never reach it by holding on to everything you have now. You must be willing to let go, to release, to walk away, to change. That is the price of growth, and it is always worth paying. Discipline is the bridge between who you are right now and who you want to become. Every dream, every goal, every desire for a better life is dependent on your ability to remain disciplined when it is easier to quit, when it is tempting to procrastinate, when no one is watching you. Consistency is the proof of discipline. It is the act of showing up day after day, not just when you feel motivated, not just when it is convenient, but especially when it is difficult. Together, discipline and consistency form the foundation of every lasting success story in the world. Without them, talent is wasted, intelligence is underutilized, and potential remains unfulfilled. Motivation may inspire you to start, but it is discipline that carries you to the finish line. Discipline is not about feeling good in the moment. It is about doing what must be done whether you feel like it or not. Success rarely happens in bursts of inspiration. It is built quietly, brick by brick, with small daily choices stacked upon one another. These choices are often so small they appear insignificant at the time, but repeated with consistency, they compound into extraordinary results. The person who chooses to wake up early every morning to work on their craft will, over time, outperform the person who only works when inspiration strikes. The person who practices discipline in health, in study, in relationships, in finances, will eventually enjoy a life of freedom that others only dream about. Discipline is the art of self-control. It means choosing long-term rewards over short-term pleasures. It means training your mind to say no to distractions, no to temptations, no to impulses that take you away from your purpose. Most people lose the battle not because they lack ability, but because they lack discipline. They let themselves be ruled by moods, by cravings, by laziness, by fear. They allow their emotions to dictate their actions. Discipline reverses this. Discipline says, I decide how I act. I decide what gets my energy. I decide what I commit to, regardless of how I feel in the moment. That decision, repeated daily, is what separates winners from those who simply wish. Consistency multiplies the power of discipline. Doing something once is easy. Doing it every single day is where the challenge lies, and also where the reward exists. If you exercise once, nothing changes. If you exercise every day, your body transforms. If you study once, you may forget the lesson. If you study every day, knowledge becomes mastery. If you save money once, it makes no difference. If you save consistently, wealth is created. The power of consistency is invisible in the short term, but undeniable in the long term. This is why so many give up. They do not see immediate results and assume their efforts are wasted. But consistency requires faith. You must trust that the small steps repeated over and over are leading you somewhere greater, even if you cannot see the progress day by day. The truth is, discipline and consistency are not glamorous. They are not exciting. They are repetitive, often boring, and sometimes exhausting. But they are also liberating. When you build discipline, you free yourself from the control of impulses. When you build consistency, you create momentum that carries you forward even when your willpower runs low. Imagine pushing a heavy wheel. At first, it takes tremendous effort just to move it an inch. But once it starts rolling, momentum builds, and suddenly, what once felt impossible becomes unstoppable. That is the power of consistency. It turns effort into momentum and momentum into transformation. Think about how most people approach their goals. They start strong for a week, maybe even a month, fueled by excitement and motivation. Then life gets busy, distractions come, obstacles appear, and slowly their efforts fade. They stop showing up, they break their routine, and eventually they quit. Then, months later, they wonder why nothing has changed. The problem is not that they lacked ability, the problem is that they lacked consistency. They forgot that discipline is not about perfection but persistence. You do not need to be perfect every day, you just need to keep showing up more often than not. One missed day does not ruin your progress, but giving up entirely does. Discipline and consistency are habits, not talents. No one is born with them. They are developed, trained, and strengthened like muscles. And just like muscles, the more you train them, the stronger they become. At first, discipline feels difficult because your mind resists structure. It wants ease, pleasure, and instant gratification. But over time, with repeated practice, discipline becomes natural. It becomes part of who you are. The same with consistency. At first, it feels unnatural to commit to something every day, but eventually it becomes part of your identity. You no longer struggle to do it. You simply do it because that is who you are. Another truth is that discipline and consistency build trust with yourself. Every time you set a goal and follow through, you prove to yourself that your word matters. You build self-respect because you are no longer someone who makes promises and breaks them. You become someone whose actions align with their intentions. That inner trust is priceless. It creates confidence because you know that no matter what challenges come, you can rely on yourself to persist. Most people struggle not because they lack external opportunities, but because they do not trust themselves to follow through. Discipline and consistency solve that. They make you unstoppable because you know that progress is inevitable as long as you keep showing up. It is also important to understand that discipline and consistency are not rigid. They can adapt. Life is unpredictable, and obstacles will come. Discipline is not about being unbending, it is about being committed. If your routine is disrupted, you find another way. If your plan is delayed, you adjust the timeline. Consistency does not mean doing the same thing every day without fail. It means staying committed to the process, even if the path changes. The key is persistence, the refusal to quit, the ability to keep moving forward no matter what stands in the way. Discipline also teaches you patience. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, discipline reminds you that real growth takes time. You cannot rush transformation. You cannot expect overnight results. Discipline allows you to delay gratification, to endure the wait, to trust the process. And because you stay consistent, the results eventually appear, and they are far greater than anything instant gratification could ever provide. The sweetness of achievement earned through discipline is richer than any temporary pleasure. Consistency reveals the power of compounding. The small things you do daily may not look powerful, but over time they accumulate. Reading 10 pages a day may seem like nothing, but in a year, that is over 3,000 pages. Saving a small amount of money each week may seem insignificant, but in a few years it becomes a foundation for wealth. Practicing a skill for just an hour each day may feel slow, but over time you become an expert. Success is rarely one giant leap. It is the result of thousands of small, consistent steps taken with discipline. Discipline also protects your vision. Without it, you will be pulled in every direction by distractions, opinions, and temptations. With it, you stay focused, clear, and aligned with your purpose. Consistency reinforces that vision by reminding you daily of where you are going. Every action becomes a declaration of who you are becoming. When others doubt you, when progress feels slow, when setbacks come, discipline and consistency keep you moving. They are your anchors in chaos, your compass in confusion, your fuel when motivation dies. Many people admire the results of discipline without wanting to endure the process. They look at the successful entrepreneur and envy the freedom without seeing the years of consistent sacrifice. They look at the athlete and admire the strength without acknowledging the countless hours of repetitive training. They look at the leader and want the influence without recognizing the daily discipline of learning, failing, and persisting. Success is not built in the spotlight. It is built in the shadows, in the quiet, unseen hours of consistent discipline. You must also remember that discipline and consistency are contagious. When you embody them, you inspire others. Your example becomes a message louder than any words could ever be. People around you notice your commitment, your persistence, your refusal to quit, and they are influenced by it. Discipline and consistency not only transform your life, they ripple out to transform others as well. That is how leaders are born, not through speeches, but through the daily discipline of living what they preach. At times, discipline will feel heavy, consistency will feel repetitive. You will question whether it is worth it, whether your efforts matter. That is the moment where growth is happening. That resistance is proof that you are stretching beyond your old limits. Most people quit at that point. They confuse difficulty with impossibility. But if you persist, if you remain disciplined and consistent despite the struggle, you will break through to a new level of strength, resilience, and possibility. The struggle is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that you are on the edge of transformation. Ultimately, discipline and consistency are not just about success in the external world. They shape your character. They build resilience, patience, focus, and integrity. They teach you the value of persistence, the power of self-control, and the strength of commitment. They turn you into someone who not only achieves goals, but also becomes worthy of the life they desire. And in the end, that is what matters most, not just what you achieve, but who you become through the process.